I think the most important thing that you can get out of this is to understand that you are a choice-making individual, and that all of the conditions that you find yourself in your life, all of the circumstances of your life, all of the emotional reactions that you have to all of the people and all of the things and events and so on that take place in your life are really choices. And that's a very difficult thing for a lot of people to get, because they're raised to believe that I can't help the way I feel. I have a right to be miserable when somebody treats me in a certain way. I can't help it. I've always been that way. It's just my nature. It's just the kind of person that I am.
This waiter was directly from Italy and was serving this wonderful pasta and all of these things. And he was a madman. He was a maniac. Every customer was getting him all upset. He would talk to the other head waiters and running back and forth and getting himself all worked up. Finally, I said, come on over here. He said, what are you doing this for? I do this all the time. You do therapy wherever you go, right? I said, what are you taking this so serious? All you're doing is serving spaghetti. It's no big deal. I said to him, you know, before you're 50 years old, you're going to have a heart attack. Guarantee it, if you continue to behave that way every day. He said, look, what do you expect from me? I'm Italian. So, well, that explains it. I mean, his rationale for his behavior was, I can't do anything about it, I inherited it. You know, I just got deficient anger genes. I mean, I've heard kids say that, you know, when they're failing math. I can't help it. My father was lousy at math, my grandfather was, I inherited, you know, deficient math genes. It's just not my fault. I can't do anything about it. The fact is that anything that goes on inside of you that is immobilizing, that gets in your way, that keeps you from functioning in the ways that you would like to function, that stops you from reaching your goals, whatever they may be in your life, anything inside, you choose. It's yours. You own it all. And if you don't like anything about yourself, anything, are you shy? Are you nervous? Are you afraid? Are you somebody who can't handle getting up in front of groups because it scares you? Are you someone who gets angry too much? Do you find yourself being manipulated and controlled by other people too often? Are you afraid to stand up for what you believe? Are you a terrible cook? Are you lousy at tennis? You haven't got a backhand? Whatever it may be, it doesn't make any difference. You are the sum total of the choices that you make in your life. If you don't buy that, if you buy into another system, which a lot of psychologists will teach you, which is, it's in your unconscious. You can't help it. After all, you're a middle child. What do you expect from a middle child? You know, certainly can't have any identity of your own. Or maybe you're an only child. Oh, God. Maybe you're the youngest of 12. You had 11 parents, you know, all your life. Somebody telling you what to do from the time or maybe you were the oldest and you had to be a parent for 9 others or whatever. You can use any excuse that you want, or you can just say, the devil made me do it, or it's God's fault. You know, a lot of people blame God. God and Mother are most responsible for all of the things that are wrong with us, you know. The classic, the one I heard over and over and over again in all the years, and I announced it on network television one night, you know. I said, I came here tonight for one reason. I want to tell everybody in America that your mother liked your sister better. I heard it every day for 20 years, you know, it must be true. I can't do it. My mother liked my sister better. No wonder I can't. She was the one that got all the attention. I didn't get anything. Her pictures and all the photographs. Nothing for me. I know some of you don't have a sister and you think, well, then that's not the reason. She wanted one. Really. And she would have liked her better. I guarantee it. You know. It's taking responsibility for everything that goes on in your life, which is what Wayne Dyer is about. If you really want to take it home to anybody else. No blame is allowed for anything that goes on in your life. Virtually everything in your life boils down to what kinds of attitudes, what kinds of beliefs do you have about any given situation. You try to set your expectations in such a way so that you understand that your life is nothing more than a series of choices.
I have a dear friend, many of you know, we've put out tapes together, we've appeared on stages all over the world together. He's like a brother to me. His name is Dr. Deepak Chopra, a medical doctor, and a dear and close friend. And whenever anything is going on in my family, if I'm having a problem with one of my children or in my own life, and if I call him up and I'll say, Deepak, or his wife Rita, I'll say, Deepak, what do you think I should do? He always has the same answer. Meditate. I'll say, yes, Deepak, I understand meditate, but I said, what do you think? He said, Wayne, go deep inside and meditate. Always meditate. I'll say, will you put Rita on? Wayne, meditate. I say, all right. And you know, I've learned a lot in meditation. But what I know most about getting quiet and getting peaceful is this, that there's only one power in the universe, and it doesn't matter what you call it. You can call it soul, spirit, consciousness, God. You can call it Louise. You can call it anything that you want. But as Alan Watts said, you can't get wet from the word water. It's not what we call something that gives it its substance. And this one power, this one force that flows through everything and allows everything to be is indivisible. You can't cut it in half. You can't divide it. It's one. It's knowing the one. And everything in your life is almost always given a division. Male, female, young, old, tall, short, black, white, good, bad, up, down. These are all dichotomies. These are all these splits that we all have in our lives. The whole physical world that we live in and are immersed in, it's always immersed in this division. But we have to learn to fuse the dichotomies. And infusing the dichotomies and blending the one, that's what silence does for us. That's why embracing silence is so powerful. In Zen, they say it's the space between the bars that holds the tiger. And it's the silence between the notes that makes the music. These words that are coming out of my mouth right now come out of the silence. And finding that silence and embracing it means that you go to the place within you that you cannot divide. Just like you can't divide the source, the one, the spirit. You can't divide that either. It's only one. So when you go into your silence and you begin to practice meditation and you begin to make this a part of your life and embrace silence, what you discover is this is where you'll come to know your source. You'll make conscious contact with your source. I can't tell you how many people that have come to me who have suffered from serious illnesses, who've been given diagnoses that it's terminal and that you can't do it, who have gone out to the wilderness and have decided that I am going to commune with nature. And the transcendentalists, Thoreau and Emerson, they believed that nature was our source. And that we were all products of nature. And if you can get back to your source, if you can get back to that feeling of being with spirit, that's where healing can take place. And I've had wonderful stories of people who told me that it was when I began to embrace that silence that I began to feel more connected to my source. Embrace silence because it's a way to come to know God, to know your source. Both are indivisible. And the only experience you can have in your daily life that even comes close to a spiritual awakening is silence.
I urge you to meditate because it will bring you more peace, remove stress, improve your surroundings, and deflect negativity. All of this and more will definitely show up when you meditate regularly. I include the embracing of silence as one of my top 10 secrets for inner peace and success, primarily because it's the only vehicle I know of for making conscious contact with God. God is that which is indivisible. There's only one omnipresent presence called God. This presence is everywhere and is a force that creates and sustains life. It can never be divided or cut up into pieces. There's only one power in the universe, not two. You will find your answers in the silence. Remember,
It's out of the void, the emptiness, that everything is created. When you write a musical note, the silence from which it comes is just as much a part of the note as is the sound. So it is with healing anything or any relationship. Going into the quiet and listening will inspire you. I can't imagine speaking or writing without first going to God in silence. I seek alone time and space to allow my inspiration to emerge. The wilderness is therapy. Any time in your life, when you're feeling out of sorts in any way, go to nature and find your peace. Keep your silent communion with God to yourself. Everything that you wish to manifest emerges from spirit, from the silence. You don't use your ego to manifest. In fact, ego can inhibit the creative process. For this reason, I urge you not to divulge your private insights, what you intend to create. As St. Paul said, that which is seen hath not come from that which doth appear. When you talk about your emerging, manifesting ideas and relate your insights to others, you often feel the need to explain and defend them. What happens is the ego has entered, and once the ego is present, the manifesting stops. Silence is where manifesting occurs, so keep your potential miracles in the treasured silence that you embrace as often as possible. You can rely upon it and enjoy basking in the serenity and inner peace that silence and meditation always bring.
I wrote a book a few years back called Change Your Thoughts, Change Your Life, which was based upon the ancient teachings of Lao Tzu in a book called the Tao Te Ching. Lao Tzu reminds us that all being originates in non-being. Jesus put it this way in the New Testament: it's the spirit that gives life. That you didn't really come from your parents. You really, all of us came from this place called spirit. And when you showed up here in this world, you showed up here from a tiny little drop of human protoplasm, a speck, if you will, and everything that was in that little speck that became you, everything that you needed was in that tiny little speck. One of the most important metaphors that I ever use is that the first 9 months of your life, from the moment of your conception until the moment of your birth, everything was being handled for you. There was nothing for you to do. You don't get consumed with the color your eyes are going to be or what your body is going to look like. It's all taken care of for you. You just surrender. I call it a future pull. And it's pulling. It's pulling you in the direction of whatever it is that you were supposed to be. And to me, it's not too great a stretch to say if everything you needed for the physical journey was already handled in there, then why not everything for the rest of the journey as well? All of your purpose, it's in there. All of what your personality, it's in there. Everything that you were to be, not just the physical you, but everything, if you just let go and allow. And so we're born. And we look at this beautiful little creature. As parents, I have 8 children. I've seen it happen many times. And you look at this beautiful little child and you look at it and you say, great work, God. Great work. Couldn't be any better. We'll take over from here. And then we're surrounded by all these people, our family, our culture, wherever we go. And we begin to be told that we can't really trust in who we are. We have to trust in something outside of ourselves. So we're on a journey towards ambition. Once you begin to say, we'll take over from here, you introduce something, you just take this perfection and you just edge out the Creator. You edge God out. E-G-O. Ego. This ego is the part of us that starts to tell us who you are is not this perfect divine creation, this piece of God that you came from. It doesn't say that. It says who you are is what you have. It begins with things like our toys, and then our bank accounts, and then the possessions that we have. Before you know it, we begin to identify ourselves on the basis of our possessions. We begin to take on a set of beliefs about the more that I have, the more valuable I am as a person. And so we spend our lives taking these young children and immersing them in a culture that emphasizes more. It becomes almost a mantra of the ego. You have to have more. And the more you have, the more you are aware of how much other people are trying to take it away from you. The more you get consumed with how do I protect it and how do I make more of what I have. The dilemma here is that if you are what you have and things go away, then who you are also goes away in the process. Second component of this ego is the idea that not only is who I am what I have, but it's what I do. And what I do
becomes this thing called achievement. And in this whole world of believing that I am what I do, we become consumed with this whole idea of my success, my value, my worth as a human being is based upon how much I accomplish. So I have to make more money, I have to get a promotion, I have to compete with everybody else who's trying to get what I have. We are taught this over and over and over again. All of our young people are taught this when they go out into athletics. The most important thing you can do is be number one, and you say, we're number one, we're better than everybody else. And we constantly find ourselves in this competitive notion again of believing that our world is one in which we have to compete. That's what the ego says. Now, the third aspect of this is the idea that I am what other people think of me. That is, I am my reputation. Particularly, this is relevant for young people who are taught that you have to dress the way other people think, and if other people don't like you, then there's something wrong with you. If you're consumed with that, then you're going to be something different every time you turn around. Now, this is particularly relevant with women, especially in relationship to the family. Women are often taught in our culture and our society that the only way that you can fulfill yourself is by how you relate to your family, to yourself as a daughter, to yourself as a mother, to yourself as a grandmother. And while these are very important and creative aspects of every woman's life, if that's the choice that they make, it's not necessarily the only thing. And many women feel that deep within them that they have a calling to accomplish something great, to make a contribution. And oftentimes we'll put it aside. So what I encourage women to think is, don't ignore that calling inside of you. Don't ignore the part of you that says you came here to create something powerful, and you have just as much of an influence in doing that, just as much of a right to do that as anyone else does. We move into then the later parts of the ego, which talks about something called separation. And the ego has a very strong belief system that who I am is separate from everybody else. And then another component of the ego teaches us that I'm also separate from everything that's missing in my life, from all the things that I'd like to have. And then finally, the ego teaches us the most egregious error of all. It teaches us that we are separate from God. And one of the simple constructs that you learn in the afternoon of your life when you shift into the meaning phase of your life is to realize that you came from a source. We can call it God, we can call it Tao, it doesn't matter what we call it. And that this source is everywhere. There's no place that it is not. It must be, because it creates everything. Everything comes from this source. Then it must be in me. If there's no place that it's not, it must be in me. And if it must be in me, it must also be in whatever it is that I feel to be missing from my life. If you know that, then in some way, everything that's missing from your life that you would like to have, you're already connected to it in spirit. And all you have to do is figure out a way to align yourself with that and have a knowing that you're already connected to it. You just have to bring it on its way. Now let's take a look at what I mean by the word problem. In my heart, I feel that there is really only one problem for any of us. That is, when we allow ourselves to separate from God. But in a very real sense, we can never be separate from God. Yet, we often still believe that we have problems. The problems of disease, discord, fear, anxiety, scarcity, disappointments in others, and so on, are all in our minds. When we truly reconnect to our source, these feelings disappear. I use the word problem as if it truly exists, yet I know every time I use it that it's an illusion. So every time you hear the word, know that I perceive it as an illusion created by ourselves because we have separated ourselves from God. There's a powerful line in A Course in Miracles which reminds me of this lesson. It takes great learning to understand that all things, events, encounters, and circumstances are helpful. We can learn to view every crisis as an opportunity, which wouldn't necessarily make life easier, but would make it more satisfying. We would never be able to view anything as a negative occurrence because we'd see everything as useful. Our conditioning is so strong that we often have far greater faith in our problems than we do in our ability to no longer have them. We often display a much greater faith in the power of cancer or AIDS than we do in the power to heal them. The evil, the pain, the anguish are of our own creation, and they represent opportunities to gain greater learning. I ask you to keep an open mind as we travel this path of healing to bring peace back into your life on a permanent basis. And now let me speak to you about what I mean by the word solution.
I once sat in on a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The words of a sign on the wall kept gnawing at me throughout that meeting. It read, "Your best thinking got you here." I thought how true that is and how it applies to all of the circumstances of our lives. Our best thinking is exactly where all of our so-called problems exist. If we couldn't think about them, they would not exist. What we need is a change in thinking to realize that a connection to the divine is what eradicates our problems. You cannot send problems out of your life by attacking them or understanding them in more depth. Instead, you correct the error in your thinking that produces the problem in the first place. Once you bring a correction to the problem, it no longer has any validity, and it disappears. We correct these errors with the creation of a new spiritual delivery system. This is the basic introduction to the idea of having a spiritual solution available for every single problem.
Here are some specific suggestions for removing doubt from your inner inventory. Keep in mind that doubt not only inhibits your sacred quest, but can also be a destructive force in your daily existence. Make a decision that you are going to meet the invisible God within, the loving presence, so that you will know her. This means being willing to spend time in the inner silence of your being. Create the time and space for quieting and listening. Do nothing else, but do this daily. Keep in mind always that doubt is produced by your ego. Doubt is not a part of your higher spiritual self. With this awareness, you can learn to observe your doubt rather than choose to own it. Make a list of the beliefs that you still hang on to which no longer serve you. Seeing them in writing will help you identify how absurd it is to stay rooted in the beliefs of others. As you examine your beliefs, see how many start with should and shouldn't. These kinds of sentences were your earliest training and may still occupy such a large space inside you that you no longer have room for any new knowings. Keep in mind always that doubt is a mental experience. If you want a thought to disappear, you can very simply send it away in this moment, just as you can refuse to think an unpleasant thought in any moment because you are in charge of those thoughts. So can doubt be eradicated when it shows up. Say to yourself as if you are two people, the one talking and the one listening, "I have this doubt because I have allowed the persuasions of others to become my own beliefs. Now, I will think for myself and know that I do not have to live with doubt."
Part of me really knows, more than just believes, but knows that when you're born and when you show up here, your work shows up here with you. It's placed in your heart. And too often we ignore it in the name of fulfilling a destiny that has been laid out for us by other people and so on. So these people that I will be referring to, what I call ancient wisdom, this ancient wisdom came from people who felt something very profound in their hearts that they absolutely knew that they had to express. And it's almost as if you have to find within yourself what it is that you know you are here for and follow that instinct independent of what anybody else out there might think about it, without being objectionable and nasty and recalcitrant and so on, but still having within you this knowing that I have certain music that I have to play. I have certain things that I have to do. And I feel it deeply and I feel connected to that. And not allowing myself to do it means that I might spend that time. I might get to that place at the end of my life and say, what if it's been wrong? What if I didn't listen to that inner voice? An ancient teacher, his name is Patanjali. And Patanjali is known in the ancient world 1 to 3 centuries before the birth of Christ. There's no actual date of actual record of his birth and death. And he was the one who wrote the original Yoga Sutras and wrote a wonderful book that I immersed myself in a few years back called How to Know God. And Patanjali, one of the things that he said to these people, now remember, we're talking about something that's going back maybe 3,500 years or more. And here was this great teacher in the ancient world. And this is one of the things that he said. When you are inspired, the word inspired comes from in spirit. I don't know if you've ever noticed that when you're truly inspired in your life, that is, when you're doing what you know you're here for, everything seems to work. The right people show up. You don't worry about being hungry. You don't worry about being tired. You're not concerned with whether or not anybody's going to like it or not. When you're truly inspired, that is, whether it's cooking or being with your children or writing or composing music or filling out tax forms, whatever it might be, when you feel inspired, everything works. And the reason that everything works is because you have left the material, the physical world, the world of the ego, and you've moved into the world of spirit. And when you move into the world of spirit, into that invisible world, you get connected. And inspiration means inspired.
When you are inspired, all your thoughts break their bonds. As I explained earlier, being inspired is equivalent to being back in spirit. Before we showed up in form, our mind and the mind of God were synonymous, which means that we were free from the bonds of the ego mind. This is simply how the world of spirit works. It's impossible to have limiting boundaries or self-imposed shackles placed on us. When we're in harmony with the mind of God, we simply don't have thoughts that tell us we can't accomplish something. After all, our thoughts are of a higher energy. Returning to spirit results in a grand sense of being in tune with our uniquely divine purpose. Just imagine being able to go on and on for hours at a time without experiencing fatigue or hunger or thirst or mental exhaustion, all thanks to one factor, the willingness to be back in spirit. When you are inspired, your mind transcends limitations. When we're inspired, we remember that God is always in us and we're always in God. So we're incapable of thinking limited thoughts. We're transcendent. We've gone beyond the world of boundaries and entered a space of creative knowing. In other words, we surrender. We put ourselves under the guidance and control of our purposeful force. When you are inspired, your consciousness expands in every direction. When we're in spirit, every direction is possible for us at every moment because our consciousness happens within our mind. Now, this inner world of ours, reunited with its originating essence, doesn't think in only one direction. Rather, it allows all possibilities. Our consciousness is in the absolute state of allowing. All resistance in the form of thoughts is non-existence. When you are inspired, dormant forces, faculties, and talents become alive. These dormant forces will come to all of us. They're actually alive and well and have been working on our behalf for as long as we've been here. Yet they appear to be dead to some because they've left behind their divine purpose, which we decided on long before we ever took on the insane ego. When you're inspired, you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be. The act of being inspired by some great purpose allows us to feel the essence of a spiritual being having a human experience, rather than the other way around. Patanjali suggests that we could never even dream of our greatness because we've been imprisoned by our beliefs about who we are. We bought into the idea that we were limited in our ability to create an all-encompassing life, and we were certain that we had no choice in our own destiny. We defended our need to acquire more and to live a scarcity consciousness in which we competed with everyone else for a meager slice of the whole pie. All of these imprisoning thoughts result when we're not guided by spirit. Moving into a state of inspiration removes all of those restraining ideas. As Patanjali notes, we'll discover someone we couldn't imagine because we were incarcerated in ego's jail, imprisoned by what we now recognize from our inspired viewpoint as an illusion. We need to awaken from the bad dream that has stupefied us in the fog of ego and live from the blissful perspective offered by being in spirit.
So some of the things that you can do on a daily basis to begin to put this principle into practice are, I think, one of the most important things. The very first one, I have a sign on my refrigerator that I look at every day, and so do all of my children, and it says, I love what I do, and I do what I love. And this is a very important principle to have in your life. If you're doing something and you don't love it, then change your attitude toward it, or B, change what you're doing. But as long as you have the option of using love in your life,
then you want to do what you love and love what you do. So practice saying that over and over again. And when you find yourself about to complain and find fault with something, remind yourself, I'm doing what I love and I'm loving what I do. And I always have the choice to love it. Even if it's something that I would rather not be doing at the moment, you can still do it with a sense of love. And then the second thing I would recommend in honoring your worthiness to receive is to make every effort to remove the habits that you have of pessimism and negativity and judgment and complaining and gossip and cynicism and resentment and fault-finding. All of these kinds of ways that we have in our inner dialogues and our outer dialogues. You get these words out of your vocabulary and you replace them with words of optimism and love and acceptance and kindness and peace as your way of communicating, as your way of processing your world and all the people that are in it. It's just a habit. Most of these things about complaining about the weather or complaining about the way your Aunt Tilly does her hair or not liking the way the dog comes in the morning or whatever it is, all of these things are just habits that you've cultivated, and they keep you from feeling worthy of receiving all that you would like to have manifesting. Love is the energy that will bring that to you, and if you don't experience and use this love in your own communications, then it will be blocked from your life. I'd also, of course, always give yourself quiet time each day to erase any feelings that you have of unworthiness. One of the cliches of our culture today is that God doesn't make any garbage. God doesn't make any mistakes. And you are not a mistake. You are absolutely as holy and divine as everyone and everything else on this planet now, or that has ever been here or ever will be. That divine energy and force is within you. It can't be taken away from you. And just take a moment or two every time that you start putting yourself down or finding fault with something about yourself to remind yourself that you are a divine creation. You are a piece of God. And when you put yourself down, you're literally putting God down. And that's something you want to avoid doing. I would recommend also each day that you read spiritual literature or poetry. You'll see a lot of poetry and a lot of references to spiritual literature and throughout this program and all of the programs that I've produced for Nightingale Conant and in all of my books, because it's something that I work at every day. I can't go into a bookstore without coming home with some new piece of poetry or new essays that someone might have written, and I just set them in key places in my house, and I read them, and I encourage other people to read them, and I take passages out of them. It's almost like doing my spiritual homework, and I do it each and every day of my life. Also, I would allow yourself to be surrounded by things of beauty as much as possible. One of the things that we have in our home is fresh flowers every day. They're always there, and when they have a tendency to dry out, then we replace them with new flowers. And nice photographs, and putting on our walls pictures of the children and good times and wonderful memories, so that we can look at these things of beauty, including pictures of yourself. And I would also practice kindness toward yourself as frequently as possible. The more that you can remember that you are worthy of that kindness, and give yourself a chance to just do something extra nice for yourself. You know, get that expensive thing on the menu, or buy yourself that little bottle of perfume, or give yourself the option of having a glass of wine on an airplane, or sitting in first class, or whatever it is that might be something that you would enjoy. The final thing that I would do in assessing my worthiness is to begin to process the universe as a friendly place rather than an unfriendly place. I mean, this is the only place that you have. This air that you're breathing is very friendly. This fire that keeps you warm, this sun that keeps you warm, it's very friendly. And so is the grass that you walk upon, and so is the snow that falls down, and so is the rain. Everything about the universe is supportive of you. So see it as a friendly place rather than a place that is conspiring against you.
People who have a scarcity consciousness believe in scarcity. They defend it, they argue for it, and they tell everybody else that that's what's going to happen, and sure enough, that's what they create. Your purpose as a human being for being here, since you can't have anything, you can't take a thing with you out of the dream, it all just evaporates back into that amorphous, dimensionless place, it's not even a place, called thought or consciousness or Louise. Then the only thing that you can do, you show up with this naked little body, it goes through its wrinkling process, and then you leave in this wrinkled naked body. If you can't get anything or own anything or be attached to anything, then the only thing you can do is give it away. If you can't get anything, you have to give. When you get that your purpose is about giving and loving and serving, and understanding that, and that whatever it is that you're doing, if you're in sales, if you're focused on how can I help the quotas and meet the quotas of the people that I'm serving instead of what's in it for me, outcome, if you can, in your relationships, give yourself to that other person, if you can find yourself in a position of being able to serve, that is all you can do with your humanity. The measure of the effectiveness of your life is not going to be in what you accumulated. It's going to be in what you were able to give. If you get on giving, your life is working at all levels. When you are inspired, your life works in all areas and in all levels. When you're not inspired, your life isn't working in any level. And when you get to that place where you go within and discover that, then you start taking care of your body in ways that you never did before. Or as the Sufis say, if you don't have a temple in your heart, you'll never find your heart in a temple. It's really about going within, discovering this invisible dimension of yourself through meditation. I don't know how else to do it. And then surrendering, and then knowing and asking the question, how may I serve? And as long as you're about that, then you'll understand what Thoreau talked about when he went to Walden in his great definition of success. If you advance confidently in the direction of your own dreams and endeavor to live the life which you have imagined, you will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. All that you sought and wanted before you got on the path and before you went through that gate will start arriving in your life, and you know what? You won't want it any longer, and you'll give it away. And the more of it that you'll give away, the more of it will keep coming back into you. And the more you hoard it and think, I can get a hold of this is mine, it's like trying to get a hold of a fistful of water. The tighter you grab, the less you get. But when you relax and put your hand in it, you can experience it all you want. It's about giving, serving, and loving. If you understand that you can't own anything, you can't get anything, you can't have anything, that you just get a parenthesis in eternity and then it's gone. It's an instant, that the jewelry that adorns you will adorn another in a metaphysical instant, that the house that you think is yours will house another just like that in an instant. And you can't have anything, and from the perspective of dying and looking back, it's like waking from the dream. You can't be attached to all of that stuff that was back there because it's now back in pure thought, as is everything.
It's a story I heard many, many years ago, and I've never forgotten. It's a story of an older woman who lived by the side of a river up in the mountains, the Himalayas. And she was a divine soul, and she carried with her bread in a sack. And one day, she was sitting by the edge of the river where she lived, and as she was looking at the riverbed, she noticed a precious stone. Not just any precious stone, but a precious stone like this, big. And she picked it up and realized that with this precious stone and its value, she would have a lock on abundance and prosperity for the rest of her life. Such was its value. And as she was sitting there, she put the stone back in her bag, and a man, a traveler, an itinerant traveler, came along and noticed her sitting by the edge of the river. And he asked her, he said, "I'm hungry, I've had nothing to eat. Could I have something to eat?" She said, "Of course." And she reached into her bag, and she took out a crust of bread and handed it to him. As she did this, the traveler noticed the precious stone gleaming. And he said to her, "I'd like to have that. Could I have that, please?" And she said, "Of course." And she reached into the bag and she handed it to him. Now he knew, being poor, that this was the answer to his success he had always wanted, and the abundance and the prosperity, and he left. And the next day he came back. And he talked to the woman. He said, I'm giving you this stone back. He said, but I would like you to give me something even more precious than this stone. And she said, what would that be? He said, I would like you to give me what you have inside of you that allowed you to give me that stone. God bless you. Namaste. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Discarding that old belief about reality can be a major task on the path of the sacred quest. Are you ready to reconsider your view of reality? Perhaps William Blake's statement will inspire you. He said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear as it is, infinite. Can you imagine your reality in that way? Everything infinite? When your perception is expanded, nothing is real and nothing is imagined. All there is perception. When you cultivate this awareness, your reality is no longer defined by the physical world. At the tiniest quantum level, time is not a reality. Particles can be in more than one place at the same time, and they appear and disappear according to how we observe them and what measuring devices we use. All of this constitutes a new reality. Always remember, we are made of the very same energy. If you want a richer experience of your life, abandon the idea that your reality is only what your senses report. Your inner world and all of the energy of your higher awareness creates a reality very different from that which you've been taught. In this reality, your higher spirit, the loving presence within you, is dominant. In this world, you rely on something quite different than the ordinary reality. Choosing the way of the sacred quest means you will learn to rely on this new reality. Shift back to being the idealist who had inner inklings about the world of spirit. That idealist within you will happily do the following according to Buddha. Rely on the message of the teacher, not on his personality. Rely on the meaning, not just on the words. Rely on the real meaning, not on the provisional one. Rely on your wisdom mind, not on your ordinary judgmental mind. Here are some suggestions for releasing realism and welcoming idealism. Trust your intuition. You will define your own reality from now on, and your definition will be based on your inner wisdom. There are no limits within, and within is where you are going from now on for your direction. Make a list of all the things you believed in before you were told they were impossible. Writing and drawing about those early beliefs will help to re-energize them. Practice experimenting with your new reality. Keep a vision of what it is that you would like to have occur, or someone you would want to call you. Anything that is important to you. Meditate on it, manifesting into your own life. Keep track of all the little things that lead up to bringing it about. After a while, you will notice that your reality has become one in which you play a role as co-creator. As a child, you were aware of a second aspect of your being. Here I am calling that your double, or your ethereal body. As you grew older, you lost touch with this ethereal energy body. This does not mean that it is unavailable to you. Your physical body is what you've come to believe is who you are. Yet this body, in and of itself, is neutral. Your body, in and of itself, can bring you neither peace nor turmoil. It is almost impossible to make contact with your higher self when you only believe in your false self and the material world. Somewhere within you, you are aware that all of the material world is energy. This energy appears solid from the perspective of your eyes, your perceptual equipment. A closer look at the physical world reveals a dance of particles in endless voids of empty space. A closer look at those particles reveals that they are involved in another, tinier dance of more particles in a field of emptiness ad infinitum until there is only energy and no particles. This is our reality. But we've been persuaded that what we see with the limitations of our eyes is the only reality there is. Your body is a part of that perceptual system you have been conditioned to accept. Your task is to dissolve the barrier that separates these two aspects of your being. When you do this, you leap into the unimaginable. Here are some suggestions for releasing your belief in physical exclusivity. Open yourself to the possibility of other dimensions of reality being available to you. Affirm to yourself that this is all a possibility. Very few people believed in the existence of microscopic life before the invention of the microscope. There were zillions of tiny creatures swimming around in their own pool of reality, independent of anyone's opinion about them. They exist now in your skin, your eyes, your fingernails, and your hair. All of those things that you sense to be solid are alive with invisible activity. Apply the same awareness to this notion. You can't see it, but you are an energy body and a physical body. Your double would like to introduce itself to you. Our education emphasizes believing in sensory experiences. Such experiences seem to tell us that we are separate, unique, special, and disconnected from each other. Very few of us learn that there is some kind of unity. The truth is that everything is linked, including you, to all other beings. Discard the belief that you are separate from everyone else. You will acquire a reverence for everyone that will turn into love. When we lose our sense of us versus them and know that we are all us, then we have a win-win relationship with life. Practice letting go of your ego's need to be separate from others. Begin viewing yourself as a member of the human family called us. Share your toys with others, especially neighbors and even strangers, as if they were a part of your family. As the English proverb says, the hand that gives, gathers. Treat everyone as if they are part of the tribe you love belonging to. Don't mentally note their differences. Carry an inner determination to see others as just as much a part of you on a spiritual level as is your child or your spouse. Create an affirmation expressing the idea that you are my brother, my sister. You are a part of my us. There are no more thems in my life. Surrender to this radical notion that is required for you to awaken to the awareness that all habits begins with thoughts. It's radical, I know. I know it's not something you're accustomed to hearing, but you have a habit because you have intended it to be there. Now what you do is you surrender to a new consciousness, a thought that whispers, I can do this thing in this moment. I will receive all the help that I need as long as I stay with this intention and go within for the assistance I need. Now you announce to yourself that you're no longer that old habitual person. For just a second, just for a second, you awaken just for a moment. Then you go to the next moment with this surrender, not thinking about tomorrow or anything in the future. In the now, in this moment, you have the answer. That's how you go about making those seemingly difficult changes, one step at a time, with an inner grace that allows you to surrender and stop fighting. All those habits, those things that have plagued you for your entire lifetime, that you think you can't change, that are just a part of you, are nothing more than thoughts turned to intention, turned into laziness, addiction, short-temperedness, phobias, fatigue, whatever. Change the thought, change the intention, and you no longer have those as your consciousness. What you can do is create an inventory of all the things in your life which you continue to pursue, but truly you don't want in your life. This is actively putting into your life the intention of no longer pursuing the things that you don't want, which may have been your habit for a lifetime. So you remind yourself of the wisdom of the notion that you never get enough of what you don't want. Then you take this hour, this very hour, this day, now, and you create an inventory of what you would like next to the one you have outlined. Rather than deception, you might substitute truth in your relationships. Rather than booze, you might substitute 8 glasses of water a day. Rather than anger, you might substitute love and harmony. By assessing that which continues to reign into your life because you're letting it in and encouraging the leaks in your life, you automatically have the handle on a new way of eliminating the erosion in your life. You fill your life with that which you don't want, largely because you've simply never considered the available options, and you fear the glorious harmony and the intimacy that comes from refusing to chase after the poisons that are killing you. By becoming aware of them, by using your invisible miracle-making mind to create that which you truly want and know you deserve, you find yourself living in harmony. You begin to experience in the physical world all that which is what you thought you were entitled to create. Inventory your life and get it on purpose, and substitute the things that you are pursuing that you don't want with the opposite. Substitute what you do want and begin then to pursue that. And you see it works. It's like real magic. Thought, intention, and no longer pursuing that which doesn't work for you. It's like getting your life off of scatteredness, off of being splintered and being on purpose.